Hello students. Today we will discuss Living or Dead, a famous story by Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, who is popularly known as Gurudev, was born on May 7, 1861 in Calcutta and died on August 7, 1941. He is popularly known as a poet, short story writer, song composer, playwright, essayist, and painter who introduced new prose and verse forms and the use of colloquial language into Bengali literature. He was highly influential in introducing Indian tradition and culture to the West and vice versa. And he is generally regarded as the outstanding creative artist of early 20th century India. In 1901, Tagore founded an experimental school in rural West Bengal at Shantiniketan, that is known as Abode of Peace, where he sought to blend the best in the Indian and Western traditions. In 1913, he became the first non-European to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature for Gitanjali, a collection of poems. His major works include Chokher Bali, Gora, Kabuliwala, Gita Batin, etc. Now we will discuss the summary of the story, Living or Dead. Kadambini is a widow with no child who has an incredibly close relationship with her brother-in-law's son. A deep affection develops between them, as strong as the bond between a mother and a son. But one night, Kadambini suddenly dies. The family calls 4 Brahmins who take her to temple where her body will await ritual cremation. But that very night, while her watchmen are out smoking and looking for firewood, her body stills and Kadambini awakens from death and walks out. Having come back to life, Kadambini finds herself in a strange in-between. She wants to return home but tells herself that she is not alive and knows she will not be welcome to return. She realizes that even though the living fear the dead fear the living as well. In her wandering, she is found by a man who believes she comes from a good family and wants to help her get home. While Kadambini doesn't think she can return home, she asks the man to take her to the house of her childhood friend, Yogmaya. The man complies, and when Kadambini arrives, Yogmaya is overjoyed. Kadambini offers to work as a servant in her house, but Yogmaya refuses and invites her to stay. But that time Kadambini stays in Yogmaya's house is strange. Kadambini herself feels like she is dead and cannot enjoy living in her friend's house. After a period of time, Yogmaya gets fed up with Kadambini's presence and demands to know why her husband has not questioned Kadambini living in their house. So the husband embarks on a journey to Kadambini's family house to find out why she is not living there. What he finds out is that Kadambini in fact died. Yogmaya doesn't believe it, but late at night, while the two are quarreling about the matter, Kadambini comes to confirm that she did indeed die. They kick her out of the house and Kadambini returns her in-law's home. Her brother-in-law's son is glad to see her and she finally feels alive again. But everyone else is petrified of her presence, begging her to leave the boy alone. Kadambini tries to convince them and she is alive, but they refuse to believe it. Finally, she throws herself into a well in the courtyard and dies there. It is only by dying that she was able to prove that she was alive. The Living or the Dead combines two of Tagore's common short story forms, the supernatural tale and the ironic parable. Here, Tagore plays with the idea of being stuck between life and death. We see Kadambini wandering aimlessly and deeply concerned about how she will be received by the people who were close to her prior to death. Indeed, even though they see someone who looks like a living woman, they refuse to take her as such and are deadly afraid of her. The irony is that indeed she is alive, Kadambini thinks that she is dead. The narrator tells us that this happens from time to time, but the characters in the story aren't so enlightened. Even though, for example, Yogmaya accepts her old friend as perfectly alive for the majority of their time together, she can no longer see Kadamini as anything but a ghost. When she learns of her premature death, Tagore's depiction of understanding here is a strange and ultimately understand claim that preconception can work rather unintuitively to render the people we see right in front of us into the type of people they are not. In this story, the capacity to see people for what they really are is in question, and in this odd parable, Kadamini ultimately has to change herself to fit the idea people have of her. She must throw herself into a well and finally achieve that death in order to be recognized as having been alive. Thank you.